This Viewfinder episode is supported by UC Davis Health, where doctors, nurses, researchers, and staff share a passion for advancing health. Learn more about their latest medical innovations at health.ucdavis.edu.
Every 90 minutes, someone is diagnosed with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease.
The normal lifespan is 2 to 5 years. I've almost hit the 5-year mark right now.
ALS is a rare and fatal disease.
My parents are still alive, so they don't want to see their kid die.
Just not having any therapies, anything for a disease in America, to me is unacceptable.
For the first time in 22 years, a new ALS drug is approved.
Because of this medication, I may see a cure maybe in my lifetime.
Sadly, no one's immune. The football world loses San Francisco 49er icon Dwight Clark to ALS.
You can't move and you become trapped in your own body.
We'll uncover the latest research and explore the long road still ahead as we go beyond the Ice Bucket Challenge, battling ALS. In 2014, millions of people are dumping cold water over their heads for the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. That challenge became a viral fundraising sensation.
Wow, I mean, that was huge. It raised $115 million, and which is enormous. It's so much money, but it also raised awareness.
The Ice Bucket Challenge funded ALS research, new clinics, and expanded loan closets.
He needed a wheelchair, and he didn't qualify under the insurance rules yet, and so we had to wait for another year. And they gave us a great loaner wheelchair for a year.
Amy Sugimoto is executive director of the Greater Sacramento ALS Association. Shelly Hoover represents patients on the board of directors. A fiery pepper challenge is underway to find a cure.
4 years ago, I dumped ice over my head. Now we're doing the opposite with the hot pepper.
The challenge is simple. If you're nominated, eat the hottest pepper you can, and then donate to your local ALS association.
To finding a cure.
Wowza.
This is for all the victims and friends and family that have to go through this horrible disease.
34-year-old Nate Arnold was diagnosed with ALS a year ago.
Blows me away that there is a disease like this.
Nate's becoming unsteady on his feet and has fallen a few times. Nancy Wakefield runs the loan closet at the ALS Association.
It's a degenerative neurological disease that is progressive and there's no cure. Basically, your body wastes away, yet leaves your cognitive abilities intact. So your body becomes your prison.
The Loan Closet is probably our most popular program here, and it's not even just for people who don't have insurance. I mean, you may have insurance, but some of the equipment is so expensive that your deductible is, more than what you can afford.
Yeah, I ask why me every day. Every day I'm waking up expecting to be normal again. It feels pretty good.
They will initially see it, but that's giving up some of their independence. It's giving in to the disease. Then they get into that chair and, wow, wait a minute. They recognize, okay, this means I still can have some independence.
Power chairs can cost upwards of $50,000. Equipment is expensive. With support from the ALS Association, Nate's embracing his journey like a champion.
It takes your body, but you gotta try and not let it take your spirit.
ALS is Lou Gehrig's disease. In 1939, the beloved Yankee first baseman announced to the world he had ALS.
For the past 2 weeks, you've been reading about a bad brag. Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Gehrig lived 2 more years and died at the age of 37. The disease was discovered in France during the mid-1800s, but it was Gehrig who brought international attention to ALS. That's why it's often called Lou Gehrig's disease.
It does statistically heavily hit white, older Caucasian men, but really there is we've had people from all walks of life, all socioeconomics, all races. Absolutely nobody is immune. This disease can literally affect anybody.
I personally believe there's a lot of people out there with ALS that never get diagnosed.
ALS, or amyotropic lateral sclerosis, is difficult to diagnose. It attacks nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord. As motor neurons die, the brain loses the ability to control muscle movement.
I was in the best shape of my life, and then I started falling. The neurologist said, well, it's possible that you might have ALS, but I really can't tell. There's no definitive test for ALS. You rule out everything else that could possibly be wrong.
ALS affects everyone differently.
Good coffee. I was in a wheelchair by the time I was diagnosed. I've just lost my use of my shoulders and my arms in the last year. It's really a disease of loss and grief.
Shelly was 47 when she was diagnosed. That was 5 years ago.
Even with this horrible diagnosis, I've got a couple years that we can really make the best of. So that was a pretty life-changing day.
Shelly's a veteran, and that puts her at high risk for ALS.
Navy. Joined the Navy at 17.
Why veterans?
That's a great question. We would like to know that. The military would like to know that. The public would like to know that. We know that veterans have somewhere between a 2 to 3 time chance of getting ALS compared to people who are not serving in the military.
It's usually very physically active people who push themselves, to limits that may cause an additional stress. So you add that to exposure to pesticides and a predisposition. We really don't know.
It could be the infantry soldier fighting a war. It could be the person who sat at a desk.
The Veterans Administration, or VA, recognizes ALS as a service-related illness.
Fortunately, with the VA, we're not financially ruined by the disease. It costs well over $200,000 a year between equipment, and now if you add this latest medication, it's another $145,000.
The medication is Radicava, approved by the FDA in January of 2018. It's the first new drug for ALS in 22 years.
When I take the infusions, I picture like little superheroes running through my veins, helping to conquer the disease. But we really don't know what kind of effect it's going to have long term. But I'm certainly willing to try, because the alternative is dying, right? Or progressing more quickly.
The infusion takes about an hour. It's used 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, forever.
I feel really good, but what an irony at the same time I'm dying, actively in the death process. So it's just a mind, it messes with your mind for sure.
Shelly's husband, Steve, is her caregiver.
The caregivers in the ALS world are really the most courageous heroes.
There's less and less she can do for herself. Really, the one thing she can still do for herself, she can still text a little bit, and she can brush her teeth. Other than that, I have to do everything.
Shelly anticipates she may lose the ability to talk.
And then this will speak for me.
Eye-gazing technology is helping her use a computer. In the future, it will speak for her.
The computer is called a Tobii Dynavox, and it's a Microsoft Surface tablet with an eye gaze camera. So it's calibrated to follow my eyes, and wherever I'm looking, that's the mouse. I live my life.
Eye muscles are resilient to ALS. Reflections picked up by a camera tell the eye tracker where you're looking.
There were like 1,600 phrases that I recorded, and they synthesized my voice.
Coffee, please. Hey, Steve, I really appreciate everything you do for me.
The ALS Ice Bucket Challenge.
The technology is how famed physicist Professor Stephen Hawking continued lecturing at Cambridge University.
Because I had pneumonia last year, it would not be wise for me to have a bucket of cold water poured over me. But my children gallantly volunteered to take the challenge for me.
Stephen Hawking was a unique patient. He had juvenile ALS. Juvenile ALS is typically considered to be a more slowly progressive disease, but he also used all of the tools to extend his life and to continue to work within his passion.
Juvenile ALS is very rare. Hawking lived 5 decades with the disease. He died in 2018 at the age of 76.
He was so engaged in life that there was a reason for him to continue to live.
Shelly has sporadic ALS. It accounts for about 90% of cases.
You want to go for a walk?
Patients say awareness of the disease makes them feel less isolated and alone.
But overall, people had never heard of it. And then after the Ice Bucket Challenge, most people at least heard of it, and the awareness was amazing.
Shelly has a doctorate degree. She's a wife, mother, daughter, and grandmother.
When I look at the big picture, my life is incredibly blessed. So I'm not ready to give up. That's what keeps me going.
They also are cognitively intact. They know what is happening in their life, and they live at this period of time that people write songs about, where they know they're in the process of the end of their life and can experience moments with greater depth and satisfaction.
Patients are living fuller lives with state-of-the-art care. UC Davis is a certified ALS Center of Excellence, providing multidisciplinary treatment. It's also actively researching.
There's literature that documents that a patient who is treated in a multidisciplinary care has their life extended and their quality of life improved.
This is a tough day at the clinic for Tom and Laura Christoph. Tom's a veteran, and they're struggling with his recent ALS diagnosis.
You have to have a whole team of experts who treat patients with ALS, a physician and a neurologist. We have a speech therapist, we have a nutritionist, we have an occupational therapist, we have a social worker.
I have certain aspects of their medical treatment that I take care of, and then Dr. Joyce has certain aspects of their medical treatment that she takes care of.
To also provide Dignity Health ALS patients with excellent care, the UC Davis Clinic serves those patients as well.
It makes most sense to have Dignity work with the established team at UC Davis to take care of those patients. We just have one great team that takes care of all the patients with ALS in the system.
ALS is a rapidly changing disease. A patient that you see one day, 3 months later, is going to be a very different person with very different needs.
Hi, sweetie.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Pete Richards' lungs are impacted by ALS, and he needs a ventilator to breathe. Pete's wife, Lachi, and caregiver, Austin Van Bruggen, do the morning routine.
How'd you sleep?
Slept good.
Good.
Good night's sleep last night.
Every morning after Pete wakes up, he's connected to an airway clearance system.
Well, we call it the jiggle machine because it jiggles Pete's chest and it loosens up all the phlegm that's in his lungs. And it's essentially an aid to keep the fluid out of his lungs so that he doesn't get pneumonia. And we do that every morning for 20 minutes.
Austin graduated from UC Davis and is enrolling in nursing school.
I help Lachi and Pete out with whatever they need me to do, really. But primarily I help with getting him out of bed, showering, cooking dinner, cleaning around the house, dressing, things like that. This is something I just love doing, so it comes pretty easily.
Without the full ventilation like I have now, I might not have lived 2 years or 3 years after diagnosis. And now we're 4.5 years out. So I feel pretty lucky, really.
Pete's grateful for what he has and can still do, like brushing his own teeth. A few years ago, Pete used to be Lachi's caregiver.
And it's kind of interesting because she had a condition when we got married, and that's been over 25 years ago. And so our roles are kind of reversed now. Whereas I was taking care of her, and now it's kind of gone the other way, but we've always had a really great relationship.
Pete sold his coin shop in downtown Davis after his ALS diagnosis.
Your world gets smaller as time goes on, but you can still try to be happy and try to get through it, even though things are being more restrictive.
Pete enjoys reading the paper with breakfast. Eating independently is made possible by use of what's called an OBI. It's a programmed eating arm.
It saves my hands for later.
And when I was feeding him before we had the machine, then I would give him a bite, give me a bite. So this way, we both get to eat and talk together at the same time.
Right.
I've been really happy that we've had this time together, that he didn't just pass away really quickly, that we've had time to kind of settle with the news of what's happening, time to be together, time to say all the things that we wanted to say to each other. Because I'd already been sick and was in a wheelchair, we had already modified the house before he got sick. So the doorways had been widened and the ramps were already in, and we already had an adaptive van.
I've always been optimistic. We have such a beautiful home here, gardens and things like that. I don't need to go anywhere else.
Caregiver Austin has become like an adopted son.
So I am going to eat this habanero pepper for Pete and for ALS and to bring awareness.
Pete's grateful he's able to speak.
Okay, it's just a slow build. There they are.
Hiccups are coming.
Some ALS patients lose their voice muscles early on.
I've lost the ability to speak.
Patient Barbara Scott uses a text-to-speech phone app to communicate.
Diagnosed March 28th.
Kaiser Permanente has a multidisciplinary ALS clinic in Sacramento.
The goal is to give these patients a one-stop shop to get the care that they really need and deserve in one visit. We bring the services to them, and then we try to make sure that the most important services are seen first. So for instance, if a patient is having a lot of breathing difficulties, we want to make sure the respiratory therapist gets in first.
Deep, 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 and blow, 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 blow.
At Kaiser, we have a fair number of patients who are veterans as well.
I served in the military from 63 to 66, mostly in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, but then in Vietnam.
Hold them there.
Physical therapists evaluate strength and muscle movement.
Tight, don't let me uncurl.
Hi, I'm Karen.
Karen?
Karen Lowe, the speech therapist.
Speech therapist.
Yeah. Can you tell me your name?
My name is Daniel Sharp.
Most patients will come in every 3 months. If they're really not doing well, we'll bring them in every month or sooner.
Like other multidisciplinary ALS centers, patients stay in one room as therapists and doctors rotate.
How have you been doing since we last saw you?
feel like I'm getting a little weaker.
Mm-hmm. Learn in life that the harder you try, the better you get.
NFL Hall of Famer Ronnie Lott is tackling ALS head-on and with force. Two former 49er teammates have lost the battle with the disease. First, Eric Scoggins, now icon Dwight Clark. Dwight's wife Kelly tweeted she's heartbroken, but thankful for all of Dwight's friends, teammates, and 49ers fans who have sent their love during his battle with ALS.
The people that I've been around, that I know, that have been extraordinary, they try harder than most people. And why they try harder than most people, to me, is that they care.
January 12th, 2007. That date, my husband, Eric Scoggins, was diagnosed with ALS. And from there, life changed for us both completely.
Every year, Shonta Scoggins teams up with former San Francisco 49er players Ronnie Lott and Keena Turner to raise money and awareness for ALS.
We put our heads together to try to bring people together and make folks aware about it. And in the interim, Eric passed away in less than 2 years with being diagnosed from ALS.
They came up with a walk-run fundraising event called Eric's Vision.
It's an awful disease, and we have to find a cure. I'm here today in support of the ALS movement, in memory of my good friend, Eric Scoggins.
Eric Scoggins played a short stint with the 49ers, but had been good friends with Ronnie and Keena since college football days.
The diagnosis of watching a person that was the MVP of the USC game against Alabama, watching a person who had to walk on to compete, to play with the 49ers, I knew that he could deal with it. What I didn't know was the speed and the impact that it would have on so many people, his family, his friends, his wife.
Ronnie and Keena, there was not a appointment that Eric went to that either of those guys were not at. And they were there at diagnosis, and as well as they were there when Eric took his last breath.
One day a year, Ronnie's Toyota dealership in Tracy hosts the event. Sadly, the disease continues to take a devastating toll. 49er icon Dwight Clark announced his ALS diagnosis in March of 2017. About a year after that announcement, Dwight Clark died of ALS at the age of 61. ALS put Shonta on a powerful mission.
I always try to keep a positive outlook on whatever it is. Well, you know, it'll stop here, okay? So we're at the point that he can't walk. It'll stop here. No, that wasn't it. Then he lost his voice. Okay, it'll stop here. No, then, you know, his breathing, all that. It never stopped.
Shonta agreed to donate her husband's brain and spine to research.
Once we did that and they did their research, they did find that protein in his brain as far as with the concussions. So, you know, it's not conclusive that that's what did it or where or how it, you know, all triggered the disease, but he did have that protein in his brain.
After his ALS diagnosis, Dwight Clark wrote a letter to the public. In it, he addressed head trauma, writing, "I've been asked if playing football caused this." He continued, "I don't know for sure, but I certainly suspect it did." He encouraged making the game safer.
For sure, our community, professional football has been affected. For me, it's been personal that two teammates that I played with have come down with the disease.
For the last few years, trying to care for someone in the community.
Ann Lemos-Silva is a single mom living with ALS.
We rally around her and putting our arms around her and trying to make sure that she lives the best life that she can while she's battling ALS.
The new medication Radicava is working well for Ann.
It's supposed to slow the progression, but I feel a little regression.
Ann has a very rare familial ALS. Her father died of the disease. She has 2 kids, and they have a 50-50 chance of developing ALS.
I really feel that there's a cure coming and that this will help me stick around long enough to see it, that the Radicava will do that for me.
At Eric's vision, Ronnie busts a move for ALS.
This should be something that should be a top priority to try to find a cure, because currently it's just fatal.
I'm very fortunate to be around some of the best ever, like Jerry Rice, like Dwight Clark, like Joe Montana. And they try so hard every day to have excellence in their life. And when you're around this community, ALS, you see the same thing.
A habanero pepper didn't scare off gutsy 4-time Super Bowl champion Ronnie Lott. Shonta Scoggins also ate a pepper.
You know, it just takes money, right? It takes enough of us to care to keep pushing and driving, and I think we're close.
Learning how to lose and still win is really hard. And learning how to win and die is even harder.
This Viewfinder episode is supported by UC Davis Health, where doctors, nurses, researchers, and staff share a passion for advancing health. Learn more about their latest medical innovations at health.ucdavis.edu.